Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Samach Gimel Seif Vav, working through the halachas of a Lechi and a Mavui. Says the Mechaber, Tzarich shelo yehi halechi rachik min ha'kaisel shleisha tvachim. You've got to be careful that the Lechi is not too far away from the wall. So imagine you've got a Mavui, you can just picture any of those pictures, and you've got an opening. The Lechi is going to help you carry in your chotzer and your Mavui. We've got to make sure that the Lechi is not distant from one of the side walls more than 3 tefachim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yesh Eimrim, there are those who say, Sha'atam, Mishum da'asi avir da'haigisa v'da'haigisa mevatlin lei. We've had it before, that if you have it too far away from the wall, then that bit of airspace between the wall and the Lechi, and on the other side, between the Lechi on the other side, is mevatl the Lechi. Therefore, if the Lechi was wider than 3 tefachim, kasha. Even if the Lechi was more than 3 tefachim from the wall, that would be okay. Because it's an oimid meruba than the gap between it and the wall. It's always got to be within 3 tefachim of the wall. Okay, so that's just an important halacha. That when you put your lechi at the front of the chotzer or of the mavui, you've got to make sure it's within 3 tefachim of the wall. Why is that? Either because osi avir lahaigisa and is going to be mevatlit, lahaigisa mevatlit, or it's just got to be within 3 tefachim of the wall, and that would be enough kamina if the lechi is wider. More than 3 tefachim. Okay, but yesh lahachim says the Mishnah Berurah. V'halechi siv katan chof gimel v'hechi shekaveh tzuras hapesach lemavui. But when you've got a tzuras hapesach instead of a lechi on the side, das ha'hare poiskim she'ena tzorach ledakdek she b'toich shleisha. Then you don't need it to be within 3 tefachim. The tzuras hapesach mechitza gemurahi, because the tzuras hapesach, as we've said several times, is a proper mechitza, and therefore, even though it may be a little bit more than 3 tefachim away from the wall, doesn't matter. It's as if you've got a wall there. V'yesh poiskim desfir lehu de'ein chiluk bein tzuras hapesach lelechi l'inzeh. There is no chiluk between the tzuras hapesach and the lechi. And therefore, just like the lechi has to be within 3 tefachim of the side of the wall, so to the tzuras hapesach. That if you need to make your tzuras hapesach more than 3 tefachim away from the wall, then that would be okay. Just an interesting note, footnote 21. Zui das habecher shar v'hu l'shitosei. This is the Bechar Shel Shitosei. Shebi Hatam the Psuli Lechi Shechiku Ma'Koisel Mishum Shagdim Beikim Bei B'Tzat HaMachitza Apostle Zeh Shaych Kam B'Tzuras HaPesach. He says that the problem of having the Lechi more than 3 tefachim from the side of the wall is Gedim Beikim Bei. You're going to get goats who are going to break through. They can get through a gap of 3 tefachim. 3 tefachim is that sort of gap, and therefore you can have Gedim Beikim Bei. So that problem will be true even if you've got a tzuras hapesach there, and we can't have goats walking through your fictitious walls, and therefore true in Lomdus tzuras hapesach makes it like a wall there, but if you've got gedim beikim, I've got a problem, says the Bechar Shar, and that's why you should try and avoid it. So however, b'shas atchak, the Mishnah Berurah says yesh lismech lahakel. Now, just finishing off the Mishnah Berurah, v'myesh abot tfachim bein tzuras hapesach l'kaisel, if there's 4 tfachim between the tzuras hapesach and the wall, das hachayodim tzarich lahamid lechi etzal kaisel. The chayodim says you should put a lechi next to the kaisel. I'm not sure about that, says the Mishnah Berurah. One should certainly try and be machme. Even regarding, forget 4, but even regarding 3, that you should make sure that it's within 3 tefachim of the wall. Okay, Zayin, lechi. Even if the lechi is made up of bits and pieces, kasherim by, bits, you can stick them together, that would be a kosher lechi. Says the Ramah, you can make a lechi made out of sid, of lime, which is stuck on the wall. You've got to be careful it doesn't get sort of erased, rubbed away. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Lechi afilu shvarim, rotzolema, mudubakim, you have pieces that make up this lechi. Ubilvad, again, remember the lechi is the vertical, which is on the entrance of your mavui to facilitate you carrying in the mavui. So it can be made up of pieces, ubilvad sheyochel lamed b'rach matzuya, so long as it's fairly sturdy that it can withstand a regular breeze or wind. La'afuke kaira, as opposed to the kaira, That needs to be much more sturdy, that it's able to hold a brick. It's got to be, much stronger. We'll talk about that in Sif Yud Zayin, in this siman. Kasherim bay. So even if it's made out of shvarim, it's kosher. And so too, if there were bricks or stones coming out of the wall, and they're sort of distant of 3 tvachim, that can be a proper lechi, so long as they've got a height of 10 tvachim. No different to shivrei shvarim, broken pieces which together, form a lechi. And so too with the tzuras haPesach, where you've got 2 lechis, one on each side. If you're worried that the wind is going to knock down your lechi, you can put lime stuck against the wall on either side. And the corner, the cross beam which goes across the 2 lechis, can be on top of them. But the 2 side lechis forming a tzuras haPesach, they've got to have some mamosha, some substance. I'll call pekonim kechut, at least to the size of a chut, like a strand or so, a thin strand. Avumara sid levad a roshim benese. But if you just sort of lime it, you sort of paint it, or you put some sort of impression, roshim benese shekerin cried, which if you look at the bottom is gear, which is chalk. If you just put like a chalk mark, oishat tseva or any other color, loy mahami, that's not good enough. It's got to have the lechi. When you make a tzuras haPesach, it's got to have some mamosha, some sort of substance. And you've got to be careful. The Ramah said, it shouldn't be washed away or erased. Hainu al yedei klovim v'chazirim, or dogs or pigs that come along. They often rub against the wall. And they've erased, they've rubbed away your vertical lechi. And that destroys your lechi, or destroys your tzuras haPesach. Yosef mishalosh aris, hailish nelav dafka dafilu nimchak rag shalosh betzimtzum gam kein bottle mevenu shem lechi uchadel kam b'Sif Yud. So in Sif Yud we'll get there tomorrow. When that happens. Okay, let's just do one more sif. Lechi she'osu me'atze Asheira kosher. Interesting halacha. What if the lechi is made out of wood from an Asheira tree, which is a tree which is used to serve avodah zarah? They worship the tree, so it's kosher. Now that's a big chiddush. Why? So Gemara Issa says the Mishnah Berurah, the oisin lechi Asheira, you're allowed to make a lechi out of an Asheira. Umashma afil lechatchila ve'ein lahakshes, because the obvious question is mehi de belechi kiven dein tzarich shir. Okay, true, you don't need a particular measurement, lo shaykh bezek katuti mechta shire, because normally for an Asheira you say katuti mechta shire, which means because the halacha is you've got to destroy it, it's as if it's destroyed, and therefore it's lacking in shir. So and therefore says the Mishnah Berurah explains that the Gemara says that the reason why you can make a lechi out of an Asheira tree, you can use an Asheira for a lechi, because true, you don't need katuti mechta shire, because the lechi doesn't have a proper share, and therefore there's no concern of katuti mechta shire. Mikol mokum mikol mokum, but ha'asaba no. Okay, true. So you haven't got a problem of shiurim, because the lechi can be a chut, it can be very very thin when you've got a tzuras haPesach. So true, there's no problem with katuti mechta shire, but surely you're getting benefit from something which you're not allowed to get benefit from. So how does that work? So Yesh Loimar, says the Mishnah Berurah, Kiven da halechi einay el tzorech mechitza, since the lechi is functioning as a mechitza, uba gufa lo mishtamish midi, you're not actually using it, it's just there. Lo choshiv hano, it's not considered the benefit. Mashenen alidei heta tiltul, that you can, it now facilitates the carrying. So it's a very thin line. So there's 2 potential issues with an Asheira. Number one, there's katuti mechta shire, which means that you're lacking in shear, in the dimension. That we're not worried about, because the lechi can be very, very thin. It can be a chut. What about getting hana? You're not actually getting hana. It's just you're not using it in any sense. It's just there. True, it facilitates you having a lechi and therefore carrying, but you're not actually benefiting from the tree directly. That seems to be what the Mishnah Berurah is saying. And kosher is therefore okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah Siv Katan Lamed Hatam, and the reason is Mishum the Kiven the Lechi Ein Sorich Shir. Since the Lechi that doesn't need to have a shear can be very thin when you have two sides. The Bekol Shehu Sagi, even a very thin amount is sufficient. To Chulel B'Sif Gimel, like we said previously. Afilu Me'atzei Asheira Mahani. Even if you use wood from an Asheira tree, that would work. Afal Gav the B'Atzei Asheira Omed L'Sreifa. Even though the wood of an Asheira tree is destined, has got to be burnt. Uchuman the Sar of Domi. Therefore, halachically you treat it as if it is burnt. The Umechtet Kotot Shiurei. It's as if that it's lacking in shear. Mikal Mokum Holo Boy shear, but there's no problem because you don't need the shear for the lechi. You've got to have it at least 10 tvachim tall, so there is a shear. Yeah, given the yochel asay kavdak ma'id shel kolshu, since for your lechi you can make a very thin strip of minimal thickness. They don't say, it's not like something else, I don't know, with which has a particular shear. We're not worried about that. Another answer for this is the belechi even if you burn the asheira lechi le'efa into ash, and then you take the ash and stick it against the wool, that would work. So therefore there's no problem of k'tuti mechet shirei, because let's say you do burn it, so you burn it. And now I've got ash. You take that ash and you put it against the wall, you've got a kosher lechi. So there's no problem with k'tuti mechet shirei. Or b'vad shirei nitl b'ruach. So long as it's not going to wash away with the wind, it's not going to sort of blow away. And therefore, it's not a problem that it's omed l'sreifa. Okay, so just to summarize what we've done today, we've said that the lechi should not be more than 3 tvachim away from the wall. And that is true either because the avir mehagis and it's mevatle, or because it just cannot be more than 3 tvachim away from the wall. And the lechi made up of bits and pieces is kosher, and you can even have a very minimal lechi. You can make it out of a very thin material, so long as it has some mamoshes to it, and not just like a sort of a bit of paint on the side of the wall. And then lastly, we said that you can make a lechi out of an asheira, and we're not worried. The two concerns would be that it's k'tuti mechet shiurei, you're lacking in shear. We discount that because there's no requirement for a shear, and even if you were to burn it, you could still take the ash and put it against the side of the wall, and there's no problem with hana because you're not actually using the actual material. It just happens to be there. It's just standing there, so you're not directly using the actual material. So therefore, we're not worried about that. Okay, we'll leave it there.